Now I want to talk through about how to calculate a two-proportion test when we have actual data values in front of us. Now there's a few ways to do this in StatCrunch. However, the simplest way for us to do this, and what I want to focus on for this semester, is simply to create a usable table first and then plug that into the summary values. StatCrunch is a little bit funny about the way that it wants to handle some of these things. Otherwise, I want to focus on the simplest, most straightforward way to get to an answer that I can. So let's try to ask a question about whether people lived or died more often if they were men or women, male or female. So what we want to make is a contingency table. So stat, tables, contingency with data. So remember we did this early on in the semester and I told you we'd be using it again. So here if we select status, because that's the column that has our lived and died, and sex, because that's what we're interested in separating by, and click compute. So note it comes up with this nice little contingency table that tells us that among the women, 16 died and 60 lived. Among the men, 24 died and 100 lived. Don't worry about this chi-square test down here. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a couple of chapters. Now what we can do is go to stat, proportion stats, to sample with summary, because we've made our summary data now. So now all we're going to do is copy the data over from here. So our sample 1 can be women. So 16 died. We're going to call those our successes because we're interested in the mortality rates. 76 total women. So note I'm not putting in the number that lived. I'm putting in the total number of women. Under successes, 24 men died out of 124 total. Now if we click confidence interval, we can click whatever we want here. Click compute. And that's going to give us our lower and upper limits for the difference. Note that this extends across 0, so we don't expect that this will, we don't have confidence that this is different from 0 in one direction or the other. That is, we don't have any evidence to show that there is a difference between these two survival rates. Our sample difference should show us that as well, as only about 1.7% difference in these two. So men only survived at women survived at a 1.7 percentage points higher rate. Now if I click options, edit, I can go back and ask for a hypothesis test instead. If we leave this as 0 and click compute, we now get a p-value. Note here that the p-value tells us that there is we have no evidence to reject the null hypothesis. And here our null hypothesis by default is that the difference between these two values is 0.